So a few years ago, my phone rings, and it's a client of mine. His name is Sal. He's Washington, D.C. He's a repeat client. We've done several programs for him, and Sal called me up, and he wanted to book me to be his opening keynote speaker for his annual leadership conference in Washington, D.C. on Friday morning at 8 a.m. on May 18th. Friday morning, 8 a.m., May 18th. Not only did he want to book me to speak there, but he wanted to license my registered trademark, No More Excuses, as the theme for his entire conference. Well, I was kind of honored by that, and I looked down at my calendar and looked to see if the date was available, and it was, and we agreed on the fee, and we put together the paperwork, and we sent him the paperwork, and he signed the paperwork, and he sent it back, and he included a deposit check, and we deposited the deposit check, and we spent the deposit check. That's what you're supposed to do with a deposit check, right? Spend it long before the event. And about 2 weeks later, I realized that some of my personal dates had not migrated over onto my business calendar. Silly little things like the family spring break to the mountains over the planned vacation to Breckenridge, Colorado, my daughter Allison's confirmation, and my daughter Jackie's high school graduation. Now, Jackie's graduation was Thursday night, May 17th at 7:30 here in St. Louis. Recap, I'm supposed to be opening keynote Friday morning, May 18th in Washington, D.C. at 8 a.m. And as you all know, the only way out of St. Louis after about 7 o'clock at night is on a donkey. So I figured, well, I would call Sal and talk to Sal, and we'd find some way to work this out. We have a relationship going here. And so I called him up. I'm thinking, you know, I could speak that afternoon or open Saturday morning. And I barely get into the conversation, and all Sal says was, hey, Sam, what about that no more excuses thing? So I hung up the phone. And I'm thinking to myself, what are my options? What are my options? And I figured, well, you know, this is still 6 months away. I could probably wait to the last minute, call in sick. He might not remember this conversation. I could have a friend, I have David show up and do a great job for me instead. Or then I started thinking, well, Jackie is my third child. But it's her first graduation. So what are our options at this point? Well, someone came up with the idea, let's check into a charter air company. So we called, anyone in the charter air business here? Good. We called every charter air company in the city of St. Louis. Did you know that the low-cost bid to get from St. Louis to Washington, D.C. at that time of the night, that evening, was $10,000. $10,000. So now, in essence, I have a $10,000 question. Who am I accountable to? Who am I accountable to? Am I accountable to the client? We have a signed contract. We have a deposit check. We have a spent deposit check. He has licensed my whole theme for the conference. And then what about my daughter, my accountability to my daughter, my relationship with my daughter, the family relationship, the whole message that I try to send out to all my children? And as I'm playing between those two, I realized that I'm really ultimately asking the wrong question. It's not about whether I'm accountable to Sal or I'm accountable to Jackie. The question really boils down to, am I accountable to myself? And so often we're worried about whether we're accountable to someone else or someone else is accountable to us, and we don't stop to ask, are we accountable to ourselves? But if we're going to be accountable to ourselves, what is it that we need to be accountable to? It's our values. And I realize that that's what it really comes down to. Now, when I talk with people and I speak with companies all over, I'm very fortunate to travel around the world speaking to companies, and companies have these mission statements, and you've either been a part of one or you are a part of one, vision statement, they have value statements. But how many of us as individuals have taken the time to figure out what our values really are? I mean, oh yeah, we know what we stand for. I want to be a good person. I want to do this. I want to do that. But have you ever taken the time to figure out really what your values are? I have a client that, as you approach their building, it's a semicircle drive up to the main entrance, and no matter which side you come from, in the sidewalk, in big brass plates, 3 foot wide, 2 foot tall, embedded in the concrete, these brass plates, each one has a word on it, and each word is one of their values. And by the time you get to the front door, you know at least half of what they stand for. You come from the other side, you got the whole story. And it left such an impression with me that I took the time one time to sit down and actually spend that time figuring out what are my personal values. And when you have to make a decision, when you're faced with a choice and you know what your personal values are, then you're going to, more times than not, make a significantly better decision. So at 7 o'clock at night, I'm fighting off 3 other dads to get a front row seat at my daughter's $10,000 high school graduation. I'm taking pictures as she crosses the stage, and at 9:30 she crosses, she comes down, it's over. With Silverstein, you're towards the end, yeah. And then we get some family pictures together, and then we bolt off to Spirit of St. Louis, and at 10:15 it's wheels up, and we're on our way to Washington, D.C. Right after we take off, there's a storm in the area and the plane's bouncing around, and I must admit at that point in time, at that very second, I asked myself, was it a great idea to go with the low-cost bidder? But things smoothed out, and before long, landing in D.C., and by about 2:30, I'm slipping between the lily whites in my hotel room and get up for the speech the next day. It takes self-discipline to live our life with ethics, morality, and integrity. But when we do, we very often achieve what it is that we're trying to achieve. We very often achieve what it is we're trying to achieve. Now, before we go any farther, I just want to let you know that the rumor that I had Jackie start her summer job the very next day to offset the price of jet fuel is totally without foundation, okay? There's no truth to that. Here's what I believe. I believe that if we achieve success, and I would step back from that and even say, more importantly, significance in our life, either personally or professionally, it's based on whether or not we're committed to one ideal. And that ideal is that we alone are accountable for our choices, our actions, and our results. And that when we accept that accountability and put it into play, then amazing things can happen. Now, David mentioned my book, No More Excuses. I'm not plugging the book, but hey, if you want to go to Amazon and buy it, I'm not going to fight you off. Here's what I did with this book that I want to share with you. I interviewed people from 6 continents talking about accountability. And I interviewed a scope of people I couldn't, when I was done, I couldn't believe it. From corporate CEOs, chairman of the board, presidents of major corporations, to former governor of Puerto Rico, someone who climbed Mount Everest, and the gentleman who headed up the team that rewrote the South African Constitution 18 years ago, which for you and I would be like sitting down and talking with Thomas Jefferson. And what I found was that in all these people's lives, there were 5 accountabilities in play. And then when I looked back and reflected on what I had accomplished and where I had succeeded, all those 5 accountabilities were in play. And then when I looked back at where I'd failed, and I'd had plenty of that, I'd strayed from those accountabilities. And what I find is this: people want to be accountable. People want to be accountable, but many times they just don't know how. Or more specifically, they don't know what they are accountable for. And so it boils down to what I call 5 proactive accountabilities. Accountability is not a consequence. Accountability should not be, oh, I messed up, it's my fault. Yeah, if you mess up, you probably should say it was your fault if it was. But what about if we can keep from messing up in the first place? Accountability is not a consequence. Accountability can be your competitive advantage. But to make it your competitive advantage, we need to look at it in a proactive sense. So there's 5 proactive accountabilities. I only have about 23.5 minutes, so we're going to cover what we can on that and give you a little something to think about. There's a card on the table that has all 5, and there's resources at the website, and you have access to all that. I want to share a quote with you out of the book, though, because this one's particularly meaningful. This is by George Tamke, and George is chairman. He's the chairman of the board of Hertz, Culligan, and former co-CEO of Emerson. So he's been a lot of places. George says, everybody has a great plan. The plans are masterful. The plans capture the essence of the challenges in the marketplace. The plans recognize the company's strategic position. The plans take all the competitive challenges into account. If it were just a matter of coming up with a great plan, success would be a very simple matter. The problem is leaders don't execute the damn plan, and they don't hold people accountable. So we go in and turn things around, and what we do is not magical. It is just a matter of saying, okay, let's review what the plans were, and let's understand what the commitments that connect to that plan are, and let's follow through and manage the thing in all the details. It is setting the expectations properly so that the commitments that people make do have meaning and are realistic. You have to instill in the organization a sense of responsibility so that the word commitment has meaning. Then you reward those people who demonstrate commitment, and you get rid of those people who don't. That's what it comes down to. The first proactive accountability is that we need to be accountable to do the right things consistently. We need to be accountable to do the right things consistently. And I had lunch with someone once, and I asked him, what's your key to success? And he said, Sam, do the right things consistently. Now, he wasn't talking about morally right. What he was saying was, what tactically right things will support your strategic intent? If you know what it is that you want to achieve, where you want to be, what you're trying to build, what activities, when performed daily, weekly, monthly, will get you to that level of achievement. And really it comes down to focus. And all the accountability masters around the world that I interviewed, anybody that had accomplished anything had incredible focus on what it was that they were trying to accomplish. You see, many days we get up and we pull out our notepad, our legal pad, our list of things to do. And what's the first thing we mark off on that list? What's the first thing that we cross off? It's probably the same for you as it is for me sometimes.
Get there.
What? Get there? We mark off the easiest thing. Which one can we do first? Oh, this one's real quick. You know, boom, I'll get rid of it. Well, the question is that really a right thing? Is that something that's going to move you forward towards your strategic intent, enable you to achieve what you're trying to achieve? So we need to know what our strategic intent is. Then we need to develop what our right things are, and then we need to focus on only participating in those activities that deliver value to your stakeholders, either internally in the organization or externally from the organization. And if it's a right thing for your organization, but maybe it's not a right thing for you, you need to delegate it to someone. Get rid of it. Give it to someone else to do. Now, here's the key with delegation. If you're going to delegate the responsibility, be sure and delegate the authority. Because when we delegate responsibility without authority, we're just micromanaging, and we might as well do it ourselves. So the first accountability is we need to be accountable to do the right things consistently. The second accountability is that we need to be accountable to manage our space. That ski trip that we went on to the mountains, during that trip I went into a North Face store, and there was this incredible down coat that 700 whatever loft, and the guy behind the counter said, this is my favorite coat, I wear it all winter, and the only thing I wear under it was a t-shirt. He had me at t-shirt. I'm thinking, this is what I need. I would love this. But you know, it was a little pricey. I didn't feel like spending the money, so I didn't buy the jacket for one reason or another. And a day or two later, we're in Breckenridge. How many of you have been to Breckenridge? A lot of you. About halfway down Main Street, on the right-hand side, if you're going this way, there's a creperie. Anybody had crepes at the little crepe stand down there? They're incredible. Banana Nutella, by the way, is just the rage. Anyway, so we're at the creperie waiting to get our crepes, and I asked my wife, where's our daughters? Because two of our daughters weren't there. They were supposed to be down there, and she said they're on their way. Within a couple of minutes, they showed up. What do they have in hand? They had a bag. Inside the bag, down coat. They'd gone out and bought the down coat. How cool is that? Love it. Get home, open the hall closet where we keep our outerwear. Guess what? There's no room in there for the down coat. My closet's probably like your closet. It's jammed with stuff. And so I started looking through the closet. And what I realized was there were coats in there that I hadn't worn that year, or the year before, or the year before. There were coats I hadn't worn in 8 or 9 years. There was something in there, I bet you someone can relate to this. There was something hanging in my closet that still had the price tag hanging on it. Okay? There was a plaid jacket from the Jimmy Carter era in the back of the closet. So we went through the closet and took all the stuff out that wasn't being used and put it in a donation stack. And once we had removed everything, the closet was a third empty. There was room for the new coat to go in. The new coat was going to keep me warmer. It was going to be more comfortable. It was going to perform better. I was going to be happier. In our lives and in our businesses, we need to be accountable to manage our space. We need to be accountable to figure out what is it that we need to remove to create the space to put something in that's going to yield at a higher level. Because over time, our closets fill up. Over time, our lives get busy. Over time, our job description grows and we take on more tasks and more responsibilities. I had a manufacturing business. We eliminated a product line to bring a new product line in. If you're in retail, it could be floor space that you need to manage. If you're in management, it might be that your mental capacity or your time is the space we need to manage. My challenge to you is to think about what can you remove from what you're doing to create more space, because you will find something to fill that space with that will yield at a higher level. And it's a strategic conference that you need to have with yourself. And maybe the conference is this: what if you finished all your work by noon, but you had to work till 6 o'clock at night? What would you do in the afternoon? What activities would you be involved in? What phone calls would you make? What would you research? And when you think about those things, maybe one of those would actually yield more for your organization than what you're doing that afternoon. So we're accountable to manage our space. I'm going to jump to the fifth accountability. We're accountable to contribute to our relationships. I want you to think about your greatest achievements. I want you to think about your greatest achievements. Think of 2 things that you're incredibly proud of. 2 things you're incredibly proud of. Now, I'm not going to ask you to share out loud. We don't have time for that. Sometimes in groups I ask them to share. One time I asked someone to share, and there was a lady that was right over here, and she stood up and she says, "I'm incredibly proud, you know, one of my greatest accomplishments, I got married." And without a beat, a woman on the other side of the room jumped up and said, "I got divorced." So, you know, it's all perspective. But we all have things that we're proud of. Now, I would take every penny out of my pocket and I would empty my bank account in the bank that's down at the corner of this building and put it on the table and be willing to wager it all that there isn't a soul in this room that has an accomplishment that doesn't have a relationship in there somewhere. And I know we're going to talk about network marketing, and obviously this is a core for relationships, and this is my setup, so don't blow your program. No pressure. It's about relationships. We have interpersonal relationships. Those are the relationships we have with other people, peers, friends, family, loved ones. And then there's a relationship we have in the community in which we live and the globe in which we inhabit. And so my question to you is, what are you doing to make contributions to your relationships? I'm not talking about money contributions. I'm talking about making a difference for someone else in their life, professionally or personally, because the more people we impact in a positive way, the more people that are out there that are going to want to impact us in a positive way. And many times, you know, we talk with our friends or someone, I can't tell you how many times in my life someone said, "Sam, have you talked with Joe lately? Or have you heard from Sue?" And I said, "No, they just don't call very often." And then I stop and think, you know, what about me? I could pick up the phone. I mean, we all have friends that rely on us to make the call. And we all have friends that sometimes we rely on them to make the call. So don't be afraid to initiate, to make the contribution. Think about it. What's the busiest day of the year? The busiest day of the year at work for each and every one of us.
Day before vacation.
Jim, you are brilliant. In the last 3 years that I've been asking that question, you're only the second person that said that. The busiest day of the year is the day before vacation. Because what are we trying to do? We're trying to clear our desk. We want to see wood before we walk out the door. And the drawers only hold so much. What would happen if someone in your office was going on vacation next week and you know that? And so maybe Wednesday afternoon you pop your head and you say, "Hey Jane, I know you're going on vacation next week, and I know you probably have a lot to do. Is there anything I can help you get done so it's easier for you to get out of here on Friday?" Wow, think about that. That's a gift. That's a contribution to a relationship. That's making a difference for them, and you're not asking for something in return. But it's the same in the communities in which we live. A lot of times you hear the philosophy of the saying, "I need to give back." Giving back is okay, but giving back is a conditional gift. I think we just need to give. We just need to give for giving's sake. I interviewed a guy by the name of Jeff Booth. He's a CEO of Build Direct in Canada. It's a building products company, and they export a lot to the U.S., and it's pretty much all internet-based. Jeff gave me a great quote. He said, "A friend told me once, when I get rich, I want to be one of those people who gives and gives at every opportunity." I told him he had it backwards. The wealthiest people I know, and I'm not just talking about wealth in monetary terms, are wealthy because they were always looking for opportunities to give. That's how they got there. So we need to look for ways to give, to deliver value to the people in our lives and the community in which we live, because when we make a difference there, we're creating a better place for us to live and the opportunity for us to do what it is that we're all trying so hard to do. One of the things David didn't tell you is I'm a marathon runner. And I love to run, and what I've discovered is this. When I'm running and I'm out there on the course, I cover the course by the steps that I take. But you know, life is like a marathon. Business is like a marathon. All of us get up every day, every morning, and we come to a starting line. And so often we want it to be a sprint. You know, we want to see the finish line. We want to see that end point. But it's just not that way. Life and business are a marathon. You know the finish line is out there, but it's over some hill and around some curve. And when we run a race, we cover the course and the steps that we take. But in life, we cover the marathon by the choices that we make. And my hope, my wish, my prayer for anybody that reads the book or listens to my message is that we embrace proactive accountability, that we look for ways to apply accountability in our life and our business so that we get it right up front. So we don't have to stand up and say, it was my fault. And so someone else doesn't have to hold us accountable for something that we should have done right in the first place. If we take it to that level, then eventually all of us are always able to stand up and say, hey, no more excuses. So, thank you for the opportunity to share a message with you. It's been an honor to be here.